All right, authorities in eThekwini are out in full force, as you've heard, in a bid to ensure safety on the roads. Now we go to Dasen Thathiah, who is tracking those roadblocks for us. Let's go live now to him. Dasen, you've been out for pretty much most of the day. What's a situation like now? I know that there were arrests that were made earlier. What's happening at that roadblock at the moment?
Well, Nati, we've been out with the Metro Police since earlier this evening, and we've been travelling to different parts of the city. When we last spoke, we were at a stop and search operation that was taking place. In fact, while I talk to you, I'll just take you closer to this roadblock that's now underway at the moment. You'll see that it's quite busy. We got through this earlier. It's a few kilometres of traffic. There's a point here where all of these vehicles will be stopped, and then each of these drivers will be screened. So there's an initial testing process, and that's just to determine if there's any reason to do a full breathalyzer on them and to have any bloods taken. And you'll see behind me that now they're starting to let some of these cars through. As I understand it, this has been going on for about an hour, and there have already been 3 arrests here. Now, this is in addition to the 47 arrests already just last night, and that was at a different roadblock. And since the beginning of December, police are telling us that it's almost 100 already. As you can imagine, that number will keep changing as more of these roadblocks are conducted. This is something that will be continuing over the next few weeks and also at least into January.
Now, Dasen, earlier we spoke about just those a number of people that the police have managed to arrest. Tell us through, talk us through the, just the type of transgressions those motorists were found to have offended, and where have they been taken to?
Well, it seems at this point that the biggest concern for authorities is drunken driving, and that's one of the reasons behind roadblocks like this. But the good news is, Unati, that just tonight there have been very few accidents that have been reported. In fact, there was just one that we stopped at earlier on the southern freeway in Durban. But that's the good news. It could mean that people are starting to drive a little more responsibly. But already here, when you look at the concerns around drunken driving, that is something that is still worrying police. So as we're talking, there's a little van behind us here. I'll just show it to you now. And this is where those that have been found to have been under the influence are taken in. Now, the bad news is that many of them are going to spend the weekend behind bars if they are found to be over the limit. And authorities are trying their best to put the message out to ask people not to drive while drunk, to rather have a designated driver or even take a taxi if they can. But as the festive season gets underway, we'll see if that message is indeed being heeded.
Now, we know that with, drunken driving, authorities have been saying that it's really up to the behavior of motorists, not to drink and drive. And if they are going to be driving, not to be drinking. And if they are going to be drinking, not to be driving. Have they changed their tactic this year? Because, it's one thing to have a roadblock and then pulling people out that have been drinking. But are authorities getting better at this? Have they changed their tactic this year at all?
I wouldn't necessarily say that they've changed tact. In fact, as you mentioned, it's year in and year out that you see a number of these roadblocks. You see this enforcement. You see all of these police on the roads during the festive season, and it almost seems like it's reactive in a sense. But I know that the provincial government has had campaigns, and it's not just during the festive season. These are campaigns that have been running throughout the year leading up to December, which aims to discourage people from drinking and driving. I've also seen liquor companies also run campaigns along a similar vein, and that's formed part of their ads that you see throughout the year. But ultimately, Unati, it comes down to the behavior, like you mentioned, and to the driver or to that person who is out partying to make that decision, to decide not to jump into their cars. If you look at just this roadblock here, the fact that it's been going on for an hour, and just take a look at all of the traffic that's built up at the moment. Through all of that, they've only been through 3 arrests so far. So I guess I could be able to say that it's a positive sign that maybe just some of these people are actually listening to that message or those messages that I just mentioned now.
Fantastic. So, Dasen, I know that you were at another stop and go, as it were, earlier this evening, and now you are at a roadblock. Are police or law enforcement officers having multiple roadblocks simultaneously, or will we just see one major roadblock happening, in parts of the province?
So what the plan is for police is, and as you can imagine, I can't mention these places, but what they're doing is they're trying to set up multiple roadblocks in certain busy areas in the city, and just to ensure that they try to move as often as possible. In that, if you look at social media, for example, and you find people now revealing where certain roadblocks are, there are WhatsApp groups as well that are doing the same thing. So what they're trying to do is just spend a certain amount of time in a certain area or on a certain street, then move to another street. But as most people know, it's normally the hotspots as well that are targeted. That's where you find your pubs and clubs, and that's generally where they would find most of these offenders leaving those places in the early hours of the morning. So that's basically how they've been handling it. But there are also patrols and random stops and searches that have been taking place, particularly at the beachfront. We were just there a little while ago, and if you look at it, and it's now probably just after 9 o'clock or so, and people are still out there and they're still braaiing. They're not supposed to be drinking, but you can see that there are some of them that have their cooler boxes in their boots as well. So those people are being watched by Metro Police who are patrolling there. The SAPS is also around, and I think by the end of this roadblock, we'll probably have an updated figure in terms of how many arrests have been made as well tonight.
Well, we'll certainly check up with you a little later.